Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Columbia and watched the stars through the main window. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years now. They were not important members, though. Most alien species saw humans as useful only for hard work and getting resources from dangerous places. The big powers in the galaxy were the Zephyrians, who looked like living crystals and controlled most trade routes. The Vortani Collective, who were like giant insects and had the best armies, and the Nexari, who were made of pure energy and thought they were smarter than everyone else. Jake had been a captain for 10 years, but he still felt frustrated. Every time humans tried to help with important missions, the aliens would say no. They would give humans the boring jobs like moving cargo or fixing broken equipment. His crew felt the same way. Chief Engineer Lisa Park was one of the smartest people he knew, but the aliens never asked for her ideas. Tactical Officer Ben Carter was brave and clever, but the alien commanders treated him like he was stupid. Today, they were flying to the outer edge of the galaxy on what the Council called a routine diplomatic mission. Jake knew this meant they would probably end up doing manual labor while the real diplomats talked. He was thinking about this when the ship's computer made a loud beeping sound. "Captain, we are getting distress signals," said Ben Carter from his station. "It looks like they are coming from a Zephyrian mining colony in the next star system." Jake walked over to look at the data. The signals were weak, but they were definitely asking for help. "How far away are we?" "About 2 hours at full speed," Lisa Park said from her engineering station. "But, sir, we do not have orders to help with any emergencies." Jake thought about this. The Council had made it very clear that humans should stick to their assigned missions. But people were asking for help, and the Columbia was the closest ship. "Set course for the colony, maximum speed." When they arrived at the mining colony, Jake could not believe what he saw. Strange black ships that looked like they were alive were attacking the Zephyrian base. The alien ships moved in ways that made no sense. They would twist and bend like snakes in space. Explosions were happening everywhere, and he could see Zephyrian ships trying to escape. "What are those things?" asked Ben. "I have never seen ships like that before," Lisa said. "They do not match any known designs in our database." Jake opened communications with the Zephyrian command ship. The face that appeared on the screen was Admiral Christek 9, a being that looked like a tall blue crystal with glowing parts. "Human vessel. You are not authorized to be in this system. Leave immediately. Admiral, we came to help. Your colony is under attack." "We do not need help from primitive apes," Christek 9 said with anger in his voice. "Your species is not fit for real combat. Return to your assigned patrol route." Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he tried to stay calm. "Sir, we have weapons and trained crew. We can assist with evacuation or defense." "Absolutely not. Humans will only make the situation worse. Leave now or we will consider you hostile." The communication ended and Jake stood there feeling angry and helpless. On the screen, he could see the strange black ships destroying more Zephyrian vessels. These unknown attackers moved like nothing he had ever seen. They seemed to learn from each battle and adapt their tactics in real time. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "those Zephyrian ships are not going to last much longer. Half their fleet is already gone." Jake watched as another crystal ship exploded in a bright flash. He thought about his orders and about what the Admiral had said. Then he thought about all the innocent people who were about to die. "Lisa, are our weapons ready?" "Yes, sir. But, Captain, if we attack without authorization, the Council will be very angry. Ben, can you target those black ships without hitting any Zephyrians?" "I think so, sir. Their attack patterns are strange, but I can work around them." Jake took a deep breath. He knew this decision could end his career and maybe get Earth in serious trouble with the Council. But he also knew he could not just watch people die when he had the power to help. "All weapons, target the unknown vessels, begin attack." Columbia moved forward and opened fire. The black ships seemed surprised by this new attacker. Jake ordered his crew to use tactics that made no sense by normal military rules. Instead of keeping formation, they moved randomly. Instead of following standard attack patterns, they did whatever felt right in each moment. To everyone's surprise, it worked. The strange black ships that had been winning easily against the Zephyrians could not figure out how to fight the humans. In 30 minutes, the Columbia had destroyed 3 enemy ships and the rest had retreated. The colony was saved and hundreds of Zephyrian lives were spared. But Jake's victory would soon become his biggest problem. 6 months had passed since the battle at the Zephyrian colony, and Captain Jake Morrison was no longer a captain. He sat in a small office on Earth, stripped of his command and rank. The Galactic Council had been furious about his actions. They said he had violated the non-aggression treaties and interfered with military operations without permission. The punishment was swift and harsh. Earth was kicked out of the Galactic Council and all trade agreements were canceled immediately. President Helen Garcia stood in her office looking at reports that made her feel sick. Without alien technology and trade, Earth's colonies were struggling. Food shipments were late, medical supplies were running out, and the advanced equipment that kept people alive in space was breaking down. The aliens had cut off all communication, too. 50 years of friendship and cooperation were gone in one day. "This is a disaster," said Senator Robert Hayes during an emergency meeting. "We should apologize to the council and beg them to take us back. Morrison's actions have doomed us all." President Garcia looked tired. She had not slept much since the sanctions began. What Jake did was right. He saved innocent lives. How can we apologize for that? "Because now our own people are suffering," Hayes replied angrily. "The colonies on Mars and Europa are already rationing food. If this continues, people will die." Across the city, Dr. Richard Stone was working in his laboratory studying pieces of the strange black ships that Jake Morrison had destroyed. The Zephyrians had been so grateful for the rescue that they secretly gave Earth some wreckage before the sanctions began. What Stone found in that wreckage made him very afraid. The black ships belonged to something called the Devourers. They were not just attackers or raiders, they were scouts. The technology was completely biological, like the ships were alive. Even worse, the metal and circuits could change and adapt to different situations. Stone realized that these creatures could learn from every battle and become stronger. He called President Garcia immediately. "Madam President, you need to see this right away." When Garcia arrived at the lab, Stone showed her images from inside the alien wreckage. "These are not ships in the way we think of them. They are living creatures that have been turned into weapons. They eat other forms of life and learn from them." The attack on the Zephyrian colony was just the beginning. Garcia stared at the strange, organic technology. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I am saying that something very dangerous is coming to our galaxy. The Devourers sent scouts to test our defenses. Now they know how strong we are, and they will send more. Much more." Meanwhile, on the insect world of the Vortani Collective, General Hive Commander Buzzek was receiving bad news. 3 more star systems had gone completely silent in the past month. No distress calls, no evacuation signals, nothing. When scout ships were sent to investigate, they found empty planets with all life consumed. The Vortani were famous throughout the galaxy for their military precision. Their hive mind allowed perfect coordination between millions of soldiers. Every battle plan was calculated to the smallest detail. But this enemy was different. The Devourers did not fight like any known species. They adapted faster than the Vortani could plan. "How many ships have we lost?" asked Buzzek to his intelligence officer. 47 vessels, General, including 2 of our heavy battle cruisers." Buzzek felt something like fear, which was unusual for his species. The hive mind was designed to eliminate emotions like fear because they made soldiers less effective. But watching their perfect military machine fail against these unknown attackers was disturbing. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison was called to a meeting with President Garcia and the military leadership. He walked into the room knowing that many people blamed him for humanity's current situation. General Kevin Murphy, the head of Earth's armed forces, looked at him with obvious anger. "Your heroic rescue has left us isolated and defenseless," Murphy said. "We have no allies, no advanced weapons, and no support. If these devourers decide to attack Earth, we will be destroyed easily." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I did what I thought was right. I could not watch innocent people die. And now our own people might die because of your decision," Senator Hayes added. President Garcia raised her hand for silence. "What is done is done. The question now is what we do next. Dr. Stone believes the devourers will attack again, and when they do, we will be facing them alone." Jake thought about the battle at the colony. His crew had been scared and untrained compared to the aliens, but somehow they had won. "Maybe being alone is not as bad as we think." "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Amy Foster, the head of weapons development. "The Zephyrians had better ships, better weapons, and more experience than us, but they were losing badly to the devourers. My crew used tactics that made no sense by military standards, and we won. Maybe our weakness is actually our strength." General Murphy laughed without humor. "You think being unpredictable and emotional makes us better fighters? I think it makes us harder to figure out," Jake replied. "Every alien species we know fights in predictable ways. The Vortani use hive tactics, the Zephyrians use mathematical precision, the Nexari use energy calculations. But humans do things that do not make sense, even to ourselves sometimes." President Garcia thought about this. It was true that humans were often criticized by aliens for being too emotional and chaotic. Maybe that chaos could be useful. "Dr. Foster, is it possible to design weapons that are deliberately unpredictable?" Foster looked interested. "It would go against everything we know about military engineering, but yes, it might be possible." "Then let us try something different," Garcia decided. "If the galaxy thinks we are primitive and chaotic, maybe we should use that to our advantage. Jake, I am giving you back your rank and putting you in charge of a new project. We are going to prepare for a war that everyone thinks we cannot win." The invasion began exactly as Dr. Stone had predicted. Massive bioships emerged from the darkness between galaxies, each one the size of a city. The Devourers had learned from their scouts, and now they brought overwhelming force. Their first target was the Nexari home system, which was protected by the most advanced energy shields in the galaxy. The Nexari had always believed their technology was perfect. Their energy beings could predict enemy movements using complex mathematical formulas. Their shields could absorb any known weapon and redirect the energy back at attackers. Overseer Luminos Prime was confident that the Devourer attack would fail completely. He was wrong. Within 6 hours, the primary Nexari research stations were destroyed. The Devourers had somehow learned to absorb the energy shields and use that power to make themselves stronger. The perfect mathematical predictions meant nothing when facing an enemy that changed its tactics every few minutes. On Earth, Lisa Park and Ben Carter worked without sleeping to prepare human ships for battle. Dr. Foster had created weapons that deliberately malfunctioned in random ways. The targeting systems would change their aim at the last second. The power levels would vary unpredictably. The firing patterns would switch between different modes without warning. "This is insane," said Ben as he installed the new systems on the USS Columbia. "These weapons could hit our own ships by accident." "That is the idea," Lisa replied, while adjusting the chaotic programming. "If we cannot predict what our weapons will do, then the enemy cannot predict it either." The Zephyrian Empire tried to organize a galaxy-wide defense, but their crystal communication networks became a problem. The Devourers learned how to intercept their messages and understand their battle plans. Every time the Zephyrians gathered their fleets, the enemy was waiting for them with perfect counter-tactics. Admiral Christek IX watched his forces being destroyed one by one. The mathematical precision that made Zephyrian military famous was useless against an enemy that adapted faster than they could plan. His perfect battle formations were turned into traps that helped the Devourers surround and eliminate his ships. As the weeks passed, refugee ships filled with survivors began fleeing toward the inner systems. The outer colonies were gone, and the middle territories were under attack. Fear spread through the galaxy as species that had never known defeat faced complete destruction. Ambassador Claire Rogers received an emergency message that surprised everyone on Earth. It came from Nexari Overseer Luminos Prime, the same being who had voted to kick humanity out of the Council. His energy form flickered with what humans recognized as desperation. "People of Earth," the message began, "the Galactic Council formally requests your assistance in defending against the Devourer invasion. We understand that our previous actions may have caused disagreement, but we are prepared to offer full reinstatement to the Council and favorable trade agreements." President Garcia read the message with her advisors. The offer was everything Earth had wanted 6 months ago, but the conditions made her angry. The aliens wanted humans to serve as frontline troops, while alien commanders made all the strategic decisions. They still saw humanity as useful only for dangerous work. "They want us to be cannon fodder," said General Murphy. "They will put human ships in the most dangerous positions while keeping their own forces safe." Jake Morrison had been thinking about this moment since his reinstatement. "We should help them, but not as their servants. If we are going to fight, we fight as equals." Senator Hayes disagreed strongly. "We cannot afford to be proud. The entire galaxy is at stake. We should accept any terms that might save lives." President Garcia made a decision that shocked the galactic community. Earth's response was broadcast on all emergency frequencies so every surviving alien government could hear it. "The United Earth government rejects the Council's terms. However, we will fight the Devourers as free allies, not as subordinates. Any species that wishes to coordinate with human forces is welcome, but under human command." The reaction was immediate and angry. Surviving alien leaders called the human response arrogant and foolish. How could a species with primitive technology demand to lead more advanced civilizations? But desperation was growing as more systems fell to the Devourers. Jake was given command of Earth's first wildcard fleet, consisting of 12 heavily modified ships crewed by volunteers. Everyone knew this was likely a suicide mission, but applications flooded in from humans throughout the solar system. They had been dismissed and ignored for too long. Now they had a chance to prove their worth. The fleet's first target was the Vortani system of Kepler 442, where Devourer forces were preparing for their next attack toward the galactic center. 3 alien fleets had already tried to retake the system and failed completely. The Devourers had learned from each battle and were now almost impossible to defeat using conventional tactics. As the wildcard fleet approached the system, Jake felt nervous but determined. His crew was smaller and less experienced than the alien forces that had failed here. Their weapons were deliberately unreliable and their tactics were untested. But they had something the aliens did not have: the ability to make decisions that made no sense. "All ships, remember your training," Jake announced over the fleet communication system. "Do not try to be logical. Do not follow the manual. Trust your instincts and do whatever feels right in the moment." Commander Sarah Lewis of the USS Defiance responded with excitement in her voice. "Understood, Admiral. Time to show these aliens how humans really fight." The battle was about to begin, and Jake knew that everything humanity had worked for depended on proving that chaos could defeat order. The Devourers had adapted to logical tactics and predictable strategies. Now they would face something they had never encountered before: the beautiful madness of human warfare. The Battle of Kepler 442 began like no other fight in galactic history. Jake Morrison led his 12 ships into a system where the wreckage of 3 alien fleets floated between the planets. The Devourer bioships moved in formation, confident, after their previous victories. They had analyzed Zephyrian precision, Vortani coordination, and Nexari calculations. They were ready for logical military tactics. They were not ready for humans. Commander Sarah Lewis aboard the USS Defiance made the first move that confused the enemy. Instead of maintaining formation with the other ships, she suddenly broke away and flew directly toward the largest Devourer vessel. Her crew thought she had lost her mind, but Sarah had an idea that made no sense to anyone else. "All power to forward shields," she ordered. "We are going to ram them." The Devourers expected her to fire weapons or try to escape when they surrounded her ship. Instead, Sarah waited until the last possible moment and then ejected her ship's plasma core, while jumping to escape pods. The core exploded inside the enemy formation, creating a chain reaction that destroyed 5 bioships at once. "That was either brilliant or insane," said Ben Carter from the Columbia's tactical station. "With humans, it is usually both," Jake replied while watching the enemy ships scatter in confusion. Lieutenant Tony Gonzalez commanded the USS Ranger and decided to try something even more unusual. He ordered his crew to fire their weapons in random directions while spinning the ship like a top. The Devourer ships tried to predict where the shots would go, but the random pattern overloaded their adaptation systems. "This is Lieutenant Gonzalez. To all ships," he announced. "I call this the Insanity Protocol. Fight like you have lost your mind, and the enemy cannot figure out what you will do next." The battle continued for 6 hours, but it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships would disappear behind asteroids and then appear in impossible locations. They would fire at empty space and somehow hit targets that moved into the shots later. They would retreat when winning and attack when outnumbered. Dr. Stone watched the battle from Earth and finally understood why human tactics worked so well. The Devourers had evolved to adapt by analyzing enemy behavior patterns. But human actions often had no logical pattern at all. A human captain might make a decision based on a childhood memory, a half-remembered song, or just a feeling that something was right. "They cannot adapt to chaos because chaos has no rules to learn," Stone explained to President Garcia. "Every time they think they understand us, we do something completely different." The turning point came when Jake Morrison decided to use the Columbia as bait. He flew directly into the center of the enemy fleet and then broadcast Earth music at maximum volume on all frequencies. The Devourers had never encountered anything like human music before. The emotional complexity and artistic randomness created something like confusion in their collective intelligence. While the enemy ships tried to analyze the strange sounds, the rest of the human fleet attacked from all directions using completely uncoordinated tactics. Each captain fought their own private war, but somehow the chaos created perfect teamwork. When the battle ended, the Devourer fleet was destroyed and the human ships were damaged but victorious. For the first time since the invasion began, an alien force had been completely driven back. But the victory came with a high price. Earth lost 4 ships, and Jake Morrison was badly injured when the Columbia took a direct hit while covering the retreat of Vortani civilian vessels. News of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than official communications. Refugee ships carried the story to every surviving system. The primitive humans had achieved what the most advanced alien militaries could not do. They had not just survived contact with the Devourers, they had completely defeated them. On the hidden base where the Galactic Council now operated, the reaction was confusion and disbelief. How could a species that had been kicked out of the Council 6 months ago suddenly become the most effective fighting force in the galaxy? Vortani. General Buzzek was one of the few alien commanders still alive after the Devourer attacks. His hive mind species had always relied on perfect coordination and logical planning. Watching the humans fight was like seeing a completely new form of warfare. "Their tactics make no sense," he reported to his superiors. "They break every rule of military strategy, but somehow they win. I think we need to learn from them." This was a revolutionary idea for the Vortani. Their entire culture was based on the belief that logical planning and coordination were the keys to victory. The idea that chaos could be more effective than order was almost impossible for them to accept. Zephyrian Admiral Christek IX was even more confused. He had spent his whole life studying mathematical military theory. Every battle could be won by calculating the correct moves and executing them perfectly. But the humans had thrown away mathematics and won through pure instinct. Ambassador Claire Rogers received dozens of messages from alien governments asking for human military advisors. Species that had treated humanity as inferior now wanted to learn human fighting techniques. The irony was not lost on her. Jake Morrison recovered from his injuries to find himself promoted to Admiral and Commander of Earth's growing fleet. More volunteers arrived every day from human colonies throughout the solar system. Young people who had grown up feeling ashamed of their species' reputation now felt proud to serve in the military. Dr. Amy Foster's weapons development program expanded rapidly. She created missiles that changed their own targeting mid-flight, shields that randomly shifted frequencies, and engines that accelerated in unpredictable patterns. Every piece of human military technology was designed to be chaotic and unreliable by alien standards. But the war was far from over. Intelligence. Reports suggested that the main Devourer fleet was still coming, and it was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The enemy had learned from their defeats and was adapting to human tactics. Dr. Stone warned that humanity's advantage might be temporary. "They are studying us now," he told the military leadership. "Eventually, they will figure out how to counter our chaos. When that happens, we need to be ready with something even more unpredictable." Admiral Morrison looked at the reports of the approaching enemy fleet. The numbers were terrifying, but he felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in human history, the galaxy was looking to Earth for leadership. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and chaotic was now the last hope for galactic civilization. Admiral Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the USS Phoenix and looked at the largest enemy fleet anyone had ever seen. 6 months after the victory at Kepler 442, she commanded a mixed force of human and alien ships operating under what the galaxy now called Chaos Doctrine. Jake Morrison had been promoted to overall fleet command, but his injuries kept him on Earth coordinating the war effort. The Devourers had decided to end the war by attacking Earth directly. Intelligence reports from the reformed Nexari scientist, Luminos Beta, showed that this invasion fleet was 3 times larger than any previous force. The bioship stretched across space like a dark cloud, blotting out the stars. "They want to consume our entire planet," Lisa said to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. "They think that eating our biosphere will help them understand how we think." Former enemy Admiral Christek IX now served as her tactical advisor. The proud Zephyrian had learned to respect human military genius after watching them save his people multiple times. "Admiral Park, my calculations suggest we are facing impossible odds. Perhaps we should consider evacuation." "Christek, you still do not understand humans very well," Lisa replied with a smile. "Impossible odds just make us more creative." Dr. Foster's latest breakthrough had created weapons that she called paradox missiles. These were devices that literally randomized their own behavior while in flight. Even the humans who fired them could not predict what they would do. Some would split into multiple warheads, others would change direction completely, and a few would even return to attack their launch ships before redirecting toward enemy targets. "These weapons violate every principle of military engineering," complained Vortani General Buzik, who now worked alongside human commanders. "How can you trust devices that might attack your own forces?" "We cannot trust them," admitted Commander Ben Carter from his position on the bridge. "That is exactly why they work so well against the Devourers." The defense of Earth became a 3-day battle that military historians would later call the Dance of Chaos. Human fleet commanders abandoned every traditional rule of space warfare. Instead of coordinating their attacks, each ship captain was encouraged to follow their own instincts and fight their own personal battle. Admiral Park coordinated this apparent madness through what she called controlled anarchy. Rather than giving specific orders, she would suggest general ideas and let individual captains interpret them however they wanted. The result looked like complete confusion to outside observers, but somehow created perfect teamwork. "All ships, remember that we are protecting our home," she announced over the communication system. "Fight with your hearts, not your minds. Trust your feelings and do whatever seems right." Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos found herself trapped behind enemy lines when her escort ship USS Hornet was damaged by a Devourer bioship. Her crew expected to die, but Maria noticed something strange about the enemy vessels around her. "Look at their movement patterns," she told her navigation officer. "They keep changing tactics every few minutes. They are trying to adapt to something, but they cannot figure out what." Maria realized that the Devourers were becoming confused by the contradictory information they were receiving. Human ships would attack and retreat simultaneously, fire at enemies while running away, and use tactics that changed meaning depending on the situation. "All human ships, this is Commander Santos," she broadcast on the emergency frequency. "I think the enemy adaptation system gets overloaded when we give them contradictory information. Try doing two opposite things at the same time." The message spread through the human fleet instantly. Within minutes, captains throughout the system began implementing what they called contradiction tactics. Ships would charge toward enemies while retreating, fire defensively while attacking, and coordinate independently. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and dramatic. Their bioships began moving erratically as their collective intelligence struggled to process the contradictory data. Some ships attacked their own allies while others froze completely in space. "It is working," reported Ben Carter with excitement. "The enemy ships are attacking each other. Their adaptation system cannot handle logical paradoxes." Jake Morrison watched the battle from Earth's command center, still recovering from his injuries. Despite the pain, he felt proud of what his species had accomplished. The humans had not just learned to fight the Devourers, they had learned to confuse them so completely that the enemy was destroying itself. The battle reached its climax when Admiral Park made a decision that seemed insane even by human standards. She ordered the entire human fleet to simultaneously attack and protect the largest Devourer bioship. The contradiction was so extreme that it caused a cascade failure in the enemy's collective consciousness. "All ships form a protective formation around the enemy flagship," she ordered. "Then fire everything we have at the center of our own formation." The result was spectacular. The Devourer command ship found itself being protected and destroyed at the same time. Its adaptation systems could not process this impossible situation and began randomly firing commands to the rest of the fleet. Within hours, the massive invasion force was in complete chaos. Bioships fired on each other, fled in random directions, or simply stopped functioning. The greatest military threat the galaxy had ever faced was destroyed not by superior firepower, but by superior confusion. When the battle ended, Earth was saved, and the Devourer threat was broken. Refugee aliens throughout the solar system cheered as they watched the enemy fleet destroy itself. For the first time since the invasion began, there was hope that the galaxy could be rebuilt. The Galactic Council, operating from their hidden base, sent an official message recognizing humanity as the saviors of galactic civilization. But more importantly, they acknowledged that human military methods were not primitive or chaotic. They were a completely new form of warfare that had proven more effective than thousands of years of alien military tradition. Admiral Park received reports that small groups of Devourers had survived in distant systems, but they were fleeing toward the edge of the galaxy. The enemy had learned to fear something they could not understand or adapt to: the magnificent chaos of human creativity. "Admiral," said Christech 9 as they watched the last enemy ships disappear into dark space, "I believe my species owes humanity a profound apology. We thought chaos was a weakness, but you have proven it is the ultimate strength." Lisa smiled and looked out at the stars that now belonged to a galaxy where humans were no longer considered inferior. "Christech, chaos is not our strength. Our strength is knowing when to be chaotic and when to be orderly. We fight with both our minds and our hearts, and that makes us unpredictable even to ourselves. Dr. Richard Stone made a discovery that changed everything about how the galaxy understood the Devourer threat. Deep in his laboratory on Earth, surrounded by wreckage from dozens of bioships, he finally understood what the enemy really was. The Devourers were not just a species that adapted to survive, they were adaptation itself, turned into a living weapon. "President Garcia, you need to see this immediately," Stone said during an emergency video call. His face showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. When the president arrived at the laboratory, Stone showed her brain scans from captured Devourer tissue. "Look at these neural patterns. The Devourers do not have individual consciousness like we do. Their entire species exists as one collective mind that learns by consuming and analyzing other forms of life." Garcia stared at the strange images. "What does this mean for the war?" "It means we have been fighting this wrong from the beginning," Stone explained. "Military victory is not enough. As long as even a few Devourers survive, they will eventually learn to counter our tactics. We need to attack their collective consciousness directly." The final phase of the war began with Operation Mindbreak, the most desperate plan in human history. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer fleets through normal combat, humanity would attempt to overload their collective intelligence with so much chaotic information that their entire species would suffer a mental collapse. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison, now recovered from his injuries, returned to command the USS Columbia for this final mission. The plan required every human ship in the galaxy to simultaneously engage Devourer forces while following attack patterns generated by Dr. Foster's new quantum chaos computers. "These computers create battle plans that have no logic at all," Foster explained to the assembled fleet commanders. "They use random number generators, poetry analysis, and even music theory to create tactics that make no sense to any rational mind. More importantly, the plan required human crews to make decisions based on emotions rather than logic. Love, anger, fear, hope, and creativity were concepts that the Devourer collective consciousness could not process or predict. "We are going to fight them with everything that makes us human," Jake announced to his crew as they prepared for the final battle. "Do not think about tactics or strategy. Fight with your heart and trust that chaos will find a way to win." The climactic battle took place across 12 star systems simultaneously. Human ships appeared throughout Devourer space using hyperspace jumps that followed no predictable pattern. Some captains made tactical decisions based on childhood memories. Others used pieces of music or poetry to guide their movements. Captain Tony Gonzalez commanded a squadron that attacked enemy formations while playing Earth jazz music at maximum volume. The improvised, emotional nature of the music created patterns that the Devourer minds found impossible to analyze. Commander Maria Santos led her ships in an attack formation based on a dance she remembered from her wedding. The flowing, emotional movements translated into space combat in ways that confused the enemy beyond their ability to adapt. Throughout the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human creativity was turned into a weapon more powerful than any technology. The Devourers found themselves facing thousands of ships acting in ways that defied all logical analysis. Dr. Stone monitored the collective Devourer consciousness from Earth and watched as their mental patterns began to break down. "It is working," he reported to President Garcia. "Their adaptation systems are overloading. They cannot process emotional decisions because emotions follow no logical rules." The breaking point came when Fleet Admiral Morrison made a decision that saved the galaxy through pure human instinct. Faced with a choice between protecting Earth's remaining colonies or pursuing the main Devourer fleet, he chose to do both simultaneously by splitting his forces in a way that made no mathematical sense. The contradiction was so extreme that it caused a complete cascade failure in the Devourer collective consciousness. Across the galaxy, Bioships began attacking each other as their shared mind collapsed under the weight of trying to understand human emotional logic. All devourer ships are showing erratic behavior, reported Lisa Park from her command ship. They appear to be attacking randomly, including their own forces. The collective intelligence that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy was destroyed not by superior firepower, but by the beautiful chaos of human thought. The devourers had evolved to adapt to any logical threat, but they could not adapt to species that made decisions with their hearts instead of their minds. In the aftermath of Operation Mindbreak, the galaxy found itself fundamentally changed. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to make Earth the new center of galactic government, not through conquest but through the respect earned by saving every living species in the known universe. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Columbia, now the flagship of the Galactic Defense Force, and looked out at a universe where humanity was no longer seen as primitive or chaotic. They were recognized as the guardians of something precious, the power of creativity and emotion to overcome any obstacle. The formal ceremony establishing Earth as the galactic capital was attended by representatives from every surviving species. Zephyrian Admiral Christek IX served as the official spokesman for the alien governments. For too long, we believed that logic and order were the highest forms of intelligence, he said during his speech. Humanity has taught us that creativity, emotion, and chaos are equally important. You have shown us that strength comes not from rigid planning, but from the courage to make decisions that follow the heart instead of the mind. President Garcia accepted the new responsibility with humility and pride. We will work together to rebuild what was lost and create something better than what existed before. Humanity offers not domination, but partnership. Not order, but balance between logic and chaos. Dr. Stone's final report revealed that small groups of devourers had survived in distant galaxies, but they had learned something new: fear. They now avoided any system where humans were present, having learned that there were some forms of intelligence they could never understand or defeat. The story ended with humanity taking its place as the unexpected leaders of galactic civilization. The species that had been dismissed as emotional and chaotic had proven that those very qualities were their greatest strengths. In a universe full of logical, predictable species, humans remained beautifully unpredictable. Fleet Admiral Morrison's final log entry captured the essence of what had been achieved. We fought not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we chose to protect those we cared about. In the end, that choice to fight with love instead of logic saved not just our own species, but every form of life in the galaxy. Humanity has proven that our greatest strength lies not in what we know, but in what we feel.